They say the fall of an empire does not begin with the clash of swords or the burning of cities. It begins in silence, in the whispers of betrayal, in the quiet turning of keys behind gilded doors. This is the story of Emperor Alexios, who once wore the crown of Byzantium and lost it, not on the battlefield, but within his very palace. Blinded, imprisoned, forced to hear the footsteps of traitors echoing in the marble halls that once bowed only to him. The story of the caged emperor. Emperor Alexios was not born for weakness. From childhood, Emperor Alexios was told his blood carried the weight of Rome itself. Not the old Rome of ruins and ashes, but the shining empire of Constantinople, the city between worlds. Emperor Alexios walked through golden mosaics, studied the scriptures of the faith, and dreamed of a throne that seemed eternal. But eternity is fragile, and men are crueler than time. When Emperor Alexios first placed the imperial crown upon his head, the city roared his name. Trumpets sang from the Hagia Sophia. Incense filled the air, and nobles knelt with trembling pride. The empire was weary, but Emperor Alexios was young. Emperor Alexios believed he knew that he could restore its glory. Yet in Byzantium, the throne was never secure. For every hand that kissed it, another sharpened a dagger in the shadows. Emperor Alexios fought wars not only against foreign enemies at the gates, but against the endless tide of politics within his walls. Generals who wanted his power, patriarchs who doubted his faith, courtiers who bowed by day and plotted by night. Still, Emperor Alexios endured. Still, Emperor Alexios believed. But belief is a fragile shield against betrayal. It began as whispers. Advisors urging Emperor Alexios to trust men who had no loyalty. Banquets where laughter hid secrets. Feasts where goblets clinked above poisoned words. Until one night, under the glow of torches in his own palace, the trap was sprung. Emperor Alexios was seized not by enemies, but by his own guards, men he had trusted with his very life. They did not shout. They did not explain. They only dragged Emperor Alexios through the corridors where emperors once walked as gods. In a chamber draped with velvet and silence, they brought the blade. Not to kill. Emperor Alexios, no death was too merciful. They pressed him down, and in the name of power they blinded him. His last vision of light was not the shining dome of his city, nor the cross of his faith, but the cruel faces of men who had sworn loyalty. Darkness fell upon Emperor Alexios, a darkness that would never lift. From that day, Emperor Alexios was no longer an emperor, no longer a ruler, no longer a man of vision. He became a prisoner in his own palace. Behind locked doors, Emperor Alexios sat in silence. He could hear the feasts in the distance, laughter music, the clinking of wine cups. The very halls that once echoed his authority now carried the voices of those who betrayed him. Emperor Alexios smelled the roasted meats. He heard the silk of dancers as they twirled. He knew his empire was bleeding outside the walls, and yet inside. The traitors feasted as if it were eternal spring, and what was left for Emperor Alexios? A bed of stone, a chamber of shadows, and the endless sound of boots in corridors where once crowds had cheered. Sometimes Emperor Alexios would run his fingers across the cold marble. Tracing the lines of the palace he once ruled, Emperor Alexios would whisper prayers into the silence, asking God if the sins of others had become his punishment. But no answer came, only the laughter of his captors, only the feasts of betrayal, and so the empire crumbled, city by city, border by border. The glory Emperor Alexios dreamed of saving slipped away. He could not see it, but he could hear it. The news of defeats carried to his chamber like curses on the wind. Once Emperor Alexios had imagined his name carved in history as a savior. Instead, Emperor Alexios became a ghost, while still alive. The emperor who sat in darkness while others carved up the empire like vultures circling a dying beast. But the cruelest part was not the chains, not the blindness, not even the silence of God. The cruelest part was that Emperor Alexios remembered. Emperor Alexios remembered the roar of the crowds when he first wore the crown. He remembered the warmth of the sun as it glimmered on his golden robes. He remembered the hope in the eyes of his people, and every memory cut deeper than any blade. So Emperor Alexios waited for mercy, waited for justice, waited for death. None came, only darkness, only footsteps, only laughter behind gilded doors. Thus ends the tale of the caged Emperor of Byzantium, not with fire, not with glory, but with silence. Emperor Alexios, who once dreamed of restoring an empire, left to fade into darkness, forgotten by all but history, and perhaps by us who still whisper his story. Betrayal often does not come from enemies beyond the gates. It comes from within the walls you trusted most. Emperor Alexios learned this too late, and in his Siene, his empire paid the price.